Somewhere in a sunlit garage in Beverly Hills, a man is staring at a machine that shouldn't exist. It looks like it was peeled off the side of a fighter jet. It sounds like God clearing his throat. And it was built, not in Italy, not in Germany, but right here in the United States of America, by a man who refused to take no for an answer for over 20 years. Let's go back. Way back. Picture it, 1976. America is in a strange, uneasy place. The muscle car era is dying. The gas crisis has strangled the life out of Detroit's big V8 ambitions. The country that once ruled the road, the country that gave the world the Corvette, the Mustang, the Shelby Cobra, is watching its automotive soul quietly fade away. But in a small workshop in Southern California, a man named Jerry Wiegert isn't watching anything fade. He's building. Jerry Wiegert isn't a corporate man. He's not a committee, not a board of directors, not a focus group. He's one man with a vision so audacious, so wildly ambitious, that everyone around him thinks he's either a genius or completely out of his mind. Maybe both. The dream? Simple, really. Build the greatest sports car America has ever produced. Not a car that competes with Ferrari. Not a car that tries to match a Lamborghini. A car that makes them look slow. A car that doesn't borrow from European tradition, but builds its own. From scratch. From nothing. From pure, unfiltered American will. He calls his company Vector Aeromotive Corporation. And that name, Aeromotive, tells you everything you need to know about what Jerry Wiegert is after. He isn't building a car. He's building a ground-level aircraft. He's taking the philosophy of the aerospace industry, the materials, the obsession with aerodynamics, the fighter jet mentality, and he's bolting wheels on it. In 1976, he shows the world the W2. A prototype, a concept, a glimpse of what he believes America can do. The world looks at it and gasps. It's unlike anything anyone has ever seen roll out of an American garage. Long, low, impossibly wedge-shaped. It looks like something from a science fiction film, like someone had taken an F-14 Tomcat, stripped it down to its bones, and asked it to drive on public roads. The automotive press goes a little wild. The public can't believe what they're seeing. People start paying attention to Jerry Wiegert. And then nothing. The world economy stumbles. Financial backing dries up. The company stalls. Jerry Wiegert, with his impossible dream and his fighter jet prototype, is suddenly very much alone. But here's the thing about Jerry Wiegert, and you need to understand this about the man if you're going to understand the car. Jerry Wiegert does not quit. Not ever. Not once. While the rest of the world moves on, while the automotive industry shrugs and pivots toward fuel efficiency and corporate compromise, Jerry Wiegert keeps working, keeps refining, keeps believing. For over a decade, he tends to that dream like a fire he refuses to let go out. By the late 1980s, something has shifted. The economy is roaring again. The excess of the decade, the bold, unapologetic swagger of Reagan's America, has created an appetite for exactly the kind of outrageous, over-the-top statement that Jerry Wiegert has been quietly cooking up for 15 years. He secures the financial backing. Finally, after all those years of fighting and grinding and believing when no one else did, what happens next is remarkable. Vector Aeromotive Corporation, which had been one building and 4 employees struggling to keep the lights on, suddenly grows into 4 buildings with 80 people, engineers, fabricators, designers, all working toward the same singular goal. Build the W8. Build America's supercar. Build the car that proves what this country can do when it sets its mind to something extraordinary. And what they build is extraordinary. Let's talk about what makes the Vector W8 so different. Because this isn't just a fast car. This is a philosophy on wheels. Wiegert's design for the W8 was inspired by an Italian concept car, the Alfa Romeo Carrebo, famous for its dramatically wedge-shaped, almost brutally futuristic silhouette. But Wiegert doesn't copy it. He takes that DNA, that aggressive, aerodynamic, cut-through-the-air geometry, and he fuses it with something entirely his own. He overlays it with the visual language of American military aviation. The fighter jet aesthetic runs through every line, every angle, every surface of the W8's body. Stand in front of this car, and it looks like it's moving even when it's standing still. The nose is so low it practically scrapes the ground. The flanks rise up in sharp, precise angles. The rear is wide and muscular and aggressive in the way that only something designed to cleave through air at extreme speed can be. But the design is only the beginning. The body of the W8 is built primarily from carbon fiber and Kevlar. Yes, the same material used in bulletproof vests. In the late 1980s, this wasn't just unusual for an American car, it was practically unheard of. Ferrari was still building bodies in aluminum. Lamborghini hadn't gone full carbon fiber yet. But Vector was already there, already thinking in materials that belong to the aerospace world, not the automotive one. The chassis, the skeleton of the car, is a semi-aluminum monocoque structure. That means it's not a traditional frame with a body bolted on top. The body and the structure are one unified piece, stiff and strong and light in ways that conventional construction simply couldn't match. And to hold it all together? 5,000 aircraft specification rivets and an epoxy bonding process borrowed directly from the aviation industry. The floor pan itself features an aluminum honeycomb structure, the same design principle used in aircraft flooring. Jerry Wiegert wasn't just building a car. He was building a land-based aircraft. And every decision, every material choice, every engineering solution reflects that mindset.
Now,
the engine. Because if the body of the Vector W8 is extraordinary, the engine is something else entirely. Something almost mythological. Sitting transversely, meaning mounted sideways, in the rear of the car is a 6.0-liter V8 engine built by a man named John Rodek. John Rodek was not a household name. He wasn't building engines for NASCAR teams or Formula One squads. He was a specialist, a craftsman, working with aluminum racing blocks that could be re-sleeved, rebuilt, and pushed far beyond what ordinary engines could survive. This particular engine, 365 cubic inches of American muscle, is equipped like a racing motor from the factory. TRW forged pistons. Carrillo stainless steel connecting rods. Stainless steel valves. Roller rocker arms. A forged crankshaft. A dry sump oiling system with 3 separate filters and braided stainless steel hoses finished in anodized red and blue fittings, because on the Vector W8, even the things you can't see from the outside are built with a kind of obsessive attention to detail that borders on art. But the engine alone is only half the story. Bolted to this already extraordinary power plant are 2, count them, 2, intercooled Garrett turbochargers. Now, in 2024, twin-turbo setups are almost commonplace. You can get a twin-turbocharged family sedan. But in 1989, twin-turbos on a street car are rarefied air. They're exotic. They're dangerous and exciting and deeply, deeply serious. And the numbers this combination produces are almost difficult to believe, even today. At 8 pounds of boost pressure, the low setting, the conservative setting, the W8's engine produces 625 horsepower and 649 pound-feet of torque. 625 horsepower. In 1989, from an American street car. To put that in perspective, a Ferrari Testarossa of the same era produced around 390 horsepower. A Lamborghini Countach, the car that decorated every teenage boy's bedroom wall in the 1980s, made around 455 horsepower. The Vector W8, at its lowest boost setting, would have eaten both of them alive. But here's the part that truly borders on insanity. The boost pressure was adjustable. The driver could dial it up, all the way to 14 pounds of boost. And at 14 pounds of boost, during dyno testing at the Vector factory, this engine produced 1,200 horsepower, 1,200 horsepower, from a street car. In 1989,
before the internet,
before carbon ceramic brakes, before traction control was a feature anyone had, 1,200 horsepower. The transmission paired to this monster was a turbohydromatic 425, a 3-speed automatic from General Motors, originally used in front-wheel drive Oldsmobile Tornados going back decades. It sounds almost comically humble for a car of this ambition. But Vector's engineers had modified it heavily, modified it to handle the kind of torque figures that would destroy ordinary transmissions without a second thought. The suspension was equally serious. Double A-arms up front, the gold standard for high-performance handling. Did Dion tube suspension at the rear, located by 4 trailing arms that stretched all the way forward to the firewall, an arrangement that gave the W8 exceptional rear-wheel control and planted the wide rear tires with surgical precision. Coney adjustable shocks with concentric springs all around. 13-inch vented disc brakes front and rear, grabbed by Alcon aluminum 4-piston calipers. This was not a car built for Sunday drives. This was a weapon. And the tires underneath it? Custom Michelin XGT Plus rubber, 255-section fronts, 315-section rears, built specifically and exclusively for the Vector W8. Not an off-the-shelf tire. A bespoke tire. A tire engineered for one car and one car alone. You might think that a car this extreme, this focused on outright performance, would have an interior like a racing cell.
Cold. Bare.
Functional to the point of austerity. You'd be wrong. Open the door of the Vector W8, and those doors open in a dramatic, theatrical manner entirely appropriate for the car, and you step into something that feels equal parts luxury penthouse and fighter jet cockpit. The seats are Recaro, the German manufacturer beloved by sports car engineers worldwide, finished in leather and electrically adjustable. The floors are covered in wool carpeting and matching floor mats. The cabin is upholstered in leather and suede. There is air conditioning. This is a car that wants to be comfortable as well as catastrophically fast. But the dashboard is where the W8 truly reveals its fighter pilot soul. The instrument layout, the display modes, the arrangement of controls and readouts, it was directly inspired by the cockpit interfaces of American military jets from the era. For different display modes, showing the car's status in real time. Buttons are arranged with the logic and precision of an aircraft panel. Information presented clearly, efficiently, militarily. Sitting in the driver's seat of a Vector W8, you don't feel like you're in a sports car. You feel like you're about to take off. And the seating position itself reflects Wiegert's obsessive attention to the driver's experience. The seat is positioned very slightly toward the center of the car, giving the driver a more natural, balanced relationship with the vehicle's dynamics. Some things were deliberately left out of the W8's interior: power-assisted steering, anti-lock brakes. Not because Vector couldn't provide them, but because Wiegert made a conscious decision to prioritize 2 things above all else: purity and weight reduction. Every gram that could be eliminated was eliminated. Every system that added mass without adding something critical was removed. This is the car as pure idea. The car distilled down to what it actually needs to be. So, what could the Vector W8 actually do on the road? Vector's own claims were almost science fiction. A projected top speed of 242 miles per hour. 0 to 60 in 3.9 seconds. Numbers that, in 1989, were simply staggering. Numbers that would still be impressive today. But automotive journalism, to its credit, doesn't just accept manufacturer claims. It tests them. It measures them. It puts cars through their paces and reports what it actually finds. Road and Track magazine, one of America's most respected automotive publications, tested the W8 and published their findings across 2 separate issues in 1991 and 1992. Their measured 0 to 60 time? 4.2 seconds. Not the 3.9 Vector claimed, but 4.2 seconds in a car this size and weight is still breathtaking. Still supercar territory. Still enough to leave almost everything else on the road looking at your taillights. Car and driver, in their own test, managed to reach 60 miles per hour in 4.1 seconds. Road and Track didn't conduct an outright top speed run. Safely testing a car to its absolute maximum velocity requires controlled conditions that aren't always available. But based on the W8's redline RPM in its top gear, they calculated an estimated top speed of 218 miles per hour. 218 miles per hour. From an American car. And the handling? Road and Track recorded a skid pad acceleration figure of 97 centimos. Nearly 1 full gravity of lateral force. A number they stated was the highest they had ever recorded for any street-legal vehicle. Anything that had previously surpassed that number had been a race car. The Vector W8 was not a race car. It was technically a street car. A car you could drive to dinner. A car with leather seats and air conditioning and electrically adjustable Recaro chairs. And it cornered harder than almost any street car in the history of American automotive journalism up to that point. The aerodynamics that enabled those numbers were equally serious. During development, the W8's drag coefficient, its resistance to the air, was brought down to just 0.32. In a car with the W8's frontal area and aggressive proportions, that's a remarkable achievement. It's the result of not just designing something that looks aerodynamic, but engineering something that actually is, testing it, refining it, shaping each surface with the knowledge of someone who understands airflow the way a pilot understands weather. One aerodynamic consequence of the W8's extreme speed capability was discovered during high-velocity testing. The removable glass roof panel that early production cars featured created significant buffeting at very high speeds. So Wiegert made a decision. Production W8s would no longer include the removable roof. Aerodynamic integrity trumped the feature. The car came first. But the story of the Vector W8 is not a simple triumph. It's not a clean, Hollywood-style rise to glory. It's messier and more complicated and more human than that. Because nothing built on the edge of what's possible ever comes easy. In 1991, a famous name became publicly associated with the Vector W8, and not in the way Wiegert would have hoped. Andre Agassi, then one of the most recognizable athletes in America, had purchased a W8. He was exactly the kind of high-profile buyer that a boutique American supercar manufacturer dreams about. But Agassi wanted his car immediately, before it was fully prepared, before the emission systems had been properly calibrated and certified. Vector, in a moment that probably felt like smart customer service at the time, agreed with a condition. The car would be delivered, but Agassi was supposed to keep it in storage and not drive it until Vector completed the emissions work and made it fully road legal. You can probably guess what happened next. Agassi drove it. Of course he drove it. You put in 625 horsepower American supercar in a young man's garage and ask him not to drive it. That's not a reasonable expectation. That's a wish. And when he drove it, the rear carpeting burned. The exhaust system ran so hot, in a car that hadn't yet been fully sorted, that the interior caught fire. Agassi returned the car and demanded, and received, a full refund. The publicity was, to put it gently, unwelcome. The emission situation had broader consequences too. Because the W8 failed to clear California's demanding emission standards in time, Vector was forced to halt production, and when production halted, the company couldn't afford to keep all 80 of its employees. 50 people were laid off. 50 families affected. All while a pile of ordered, paid-for cars sat waiting to be built, and a company that had worked for 15 years to get to this moment suddenly found itself fighting for survival. The car finally passed emissions testing in mid-1991, and production resumed. There were 30 unfilled orders waiting. The company began working through them. But the damage to the Vector story, the narrative complications, weren't finished. Car and driver during their own W8 testing had a different kind of problem. They were given 3 cars to evaluate. All 3 broke down. Different failures, different cars, different moments, but the same basic outcome. The tests couldn't be completed. Years later, in a 2017 retrospective, the magazine used the Vector W8 as a defining example of why they never simply accept a manufacturer's claims without independent verification. They described the W8 in harsh terms as vaporware, as an illusion, as a car that promised more than it delivered. It's a damning assessment. And it's not entirely wrong, and it's not entirely right, and that tension, that contradiction, is very much part of what makes the Vector W8 such a fascinating chapter in American automotive history. Because road and tracks experience was completely different. They tested the car. It worked. It ran. It performed. They came away with nothing but praise, calling out the engineering, the vision, the performance figures, and closing their review with a ringing tribute to Wiegert and his team. A genuine, heartfelt celebration of what it means to chase an impossible dream and actually, somehow, catch it. 2 major publications. 2 completely different realities. The truth, as it often does, sits somewhere in the complicated middle. in the space between a genuinely revolutionary machine and a small company stretched well beyond its means, trying to build something the world had never seen with resources that weren't quite equal to the ambition. In 1993, it ended. Not in glory. Not with a celebration and a press tour and a triumphant final chapter. It ended the way so many American dreams end, with money and lawyers and the cold arithmetic of business. Vector's primary shareholder, a company called Wiegert, executed what can only be described as a hostile takeover. They moved in, took control of the company, and pushed Jerry Wiegert out of the very enterprise he had built from nothing over nearly 2 decades. Production of the W8 ceased. The AWX-3, the car that was supposed to be the W8's successor, never made it to series production. The vision that Wiegert had spent his adult life pursuing was swallowed by the machinery of corporate finance. Wiegert fought back. He sued. And he won, winning back the design copyrights, the equipment, and the remaining unsold cars. It was a legal victory, but the moment had passed. The company was gone. The cars were built. Whatever Vector Aeromotive Corporation was going to become, it never got the chance. Wiegert, in the years that followed, began producing a car under the Vector name, but it was the M12, based on the Lamborghini Diablo, loosely drawing on the AWX-3's design language. It was not what Jerry Wiegert had built. It was not the same dream. When the final accounting was done, Vector Aeromotive Corporation had produced exactly 17 customer cars and 2 pre-production vehicles. 19 Vector W8s in total exist in the world. 19. To put that number in context, Ferrari produces more cars in a single afternoon than Vector produced across the entire W8 production run. Lamborghini's annual output dwarfs it by thousands. Even the most exclusive, hand-built hypercars of the modern era typically produce in the hundreds. 17 customer cars. It is a number that seems impossibly small for a car with this kind of ambition, this kind of engineering, this kind of story. And yet that scarcity, that near impossibility, is also part of what makes the Vector W8 so extraordinary. These aren't just rare cars. They are artifacts. They are physical evidence that a man from Southern California spent the better part of his adult life building something that the world told him he couldn't build. And he built it. Here's what I want you to think about as we close out the story. The Vector W8 is not remembered the same way a Ferrari 288 GTO is remembered. It doesn't appear on the list of most influential supercars in every automotive retrospective. It doesn't have the cultural footprint of a Lamborghini Countach or the racing pedigree of a Porsche 959. But here's the thing, it should be remembered. It deserves to be remembered. And the reason it deserves to be remembered has nothing to do with the performance numbers, as staggering as those numbers are. It has nothing to do with the aerospace materials or the twin Garrett turbos or the custom Michelin tires. It deserves to be remembered because of what it represents. In an era when America's automotive identity was at one of its lowest points, when the great muscle cars had been strangled by regulation, when Detroit was struggling to build anything exciting, when Europe owned the conversation about high performance, one man in Southern California decided that none of that mattered. He decided that America could build the fastest, most advanced, most extraordinary sports car in the world. Not a copy of a European design. Not a homage to Italian tradition. Something entirely its own. Something that belonged to no tradition except the uniquely American tradition of betting everything on an impossible idea and grinding away at it until the world has no choice but to pay attention. The Vector W8 isn't a perfect car. 17 examples existed in the world, and some of them had problems that their owners would remember for a very long time. The company that built them was always underfunded, always stretched, always fighting battles on multiple fronts simultaneously. The story doesn't end with a triumphant IPO or a legendary racing victory or a decade of production success. But there are 17 cars in the world, maybe in a collection somewhere, maybe in a private garage, maybe being carefully maintained by someone who understands what they have, that prove something important. They prove that the dream was real, that the engine made the power, that the chassis handled the load, that a man named Jerry Wiegert spent nearly 20 years chasing something extraordinary and actually, against all probability, caught it. The Vector W8 is not just a car. It's an argument. An argument made in carbon fiber and Kevlar and 1,200 horsepower American muscle. An argument that says that this country, when it decides to build something great, can build something that the whole world has to stop and stare at. And that argument, 19 examples of it, is still out there, waiting to be discovered, waiting to be appreciated for what it actually is. The last American monster. The car that almost was, and somehow, impossibly, actually was. If this story hit different for you, if there's something about the Vector W8, about Jerry Wiegert, about the impossible American audacity of the whole thing, drop it in the comments. Tell me which part of this car's story hit you the hardest. And if you want more deep dives into the cars that America almost forgot, the wild cards, the underdogs, the machines built by people who refuse to hear the word impossible, make sure you're subscribed, because we're just getting started. The road is long, and there are more stories out there worth telling.